All right, good afternoon, everybody. Once again, this is Vincent Rodriguez with the S.L.A.P in VR, so called because I am your host, and we talk all things here, sports, life, and people. Today, I am honored to have my first actual athlete on the podcast. If you've been paying attention to the Mountain West football, you've seen this guy come up on the radar, and if you're a fellow Pennsylvanian, you've known this guy for a lot longer. I'm just going to call him the Quicksilver linebacker, and he'll know why, because I know with his chemistry background. And he's also the Quicksilver version of Bobby Boucher as well. So I would just like to introduce New Mexico linebacker by way of St. Francis, Mercury Swaim.
Yeah,
How
thank
you
you,
doing
Vincent,
today?
for having me. It's an honor to be on here. It's great to be the first one. I hope I leave a lasting impression for your podcast, and um, we can just have a good time. Thank you so much for reaching out. It's really awesome.
I appreciate you even taking the time to do this. I know you're a busy man. We'll get into all of that a little bit later, but you know why I called you Quicksilver Bobby Boucher, right?
Yes, the only metal mercury that is liquid at room temperature. So that's a good one. I like it.
And Bobby Boucher reference.
Um, I know I was a water boy when I was little, so that might be where you got that from. That would be.
So funny thing is that while I was doing my research, I don't know if you know this, but back in the day when you were your senior in high school, they did the male spotlight athlete of the week.
Yes, yeah.
That's still online on Yahoo Sports.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
Have the
gosh.
Waterboy listed as your favorite movie.
It is and still is. Oh my goodness. Okay. Wow, you did your research. Okay. I need
That's
to be on
always
my
what I
A
pride
game too,
myself
I
on.
guess.
So I guess we'll just start a little bit further back. So you're originally from Bedford, which from all of my knowledge of Pennsylvania is basically just limited to the Yinzers of Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and State College.
Yes.
So where does Bedford kind of fit in that whole, well, now I'm too, I guess. So where does Bedford fit in that whole kind of Pennsylvania area?
We're real close to State College actually, and we're probably the closest to State College out of anything. We're about an hour, I guess you call it southeast of State College. So I grew up pretty close to Pennsylvania, not a Pennsylvania or a Penn State fan. I'm actually an Auburn fan, growing up watching Cam Newton. So that's kind of my. I know, I'm going against all the Penn State fans and all the Penn State fans around when I grew up, but I just loved Auburn and Cam Newton. So I've been a fan of Auburn, but I'm a Lobo now, and I love the Lobos. They'll be my favorite team forever.
So you started as a quarterback and as a linebacker in high school. And right now your brother is actually quarterback at the same high school. Out of the two of you, who's the better quarterback or the better athlete?
Um, I mean, I could never say my little brother's a better athlete, so I'm always gonna say me. The brotherly rivalry. But no, he just so he actually finished his first year of college now. His last year of quarterbacking was last year for the high school team. And he he broke he did break one of my records. He broke my single season total yards. So that's always an argument within the family because when I broke the record, I only had the COVID season. I think I had 11 or 12 games and he had 15 games. So we always go back
Asterisk,
and forth.
asterisk.
Yes.
You going to college?
He is at Bucknell right now. He's not playing football there, but he's doing ROTC in the ROTC program there.
Awesome. That's great. So I mean, the through point between all of that is your dad is the coach at Bedford. So was basically just you being part of football just always destined, or was there always some part of you that was like, maybe I'll go somewhere different?
Yeah. Yeah. Growing up, I was a water boy and ball boy for the high school team because my dad was a coach there. So I've always been around football. Even when I was real little, he was also the high school coach. He stopped when we got to about like 5 through 10, but then he picked it back up once I was in elementary school. So I ended up being the ball boy and water boy again for the high school team. And yeah, I've always been around it. I never really thought about college football until I guess after my junior season when I had a pretty good year. And I started having coaches reach out to me and I was like, oh wow, I didn't know it was actually this good, and so I kinda looked into playing college ball, ended up receiving an offer from St. Francis my senior year of high school football, and it was my only scholarship offer coming out of high school, so I took it, and yeah, went to St. Francis for my first 3 years.
So, in that transition to St. Francis, you ended up being more on the defense full time. Was that something that you kind of came to on your own, or was it something coaches kind of pushed you towards to be a more linebacker than quarterback?
Yeah, so originally, um, my offer was they said, "You can play offense or defense, whichever one you would choose." And I just said, because college coaches know better than I. They've been in the game for longer than I have. So I said, whatever will help the team best and whatever you guys think I would fit the most at. And so they landed on defense, and I ended up being like a safety hybrid starting out my college career. So I was that for kind of my first 2 years ish, and my redshirt freshman year and my redshirt sophomore year, I played more so linebacker. My redshirt sophomore year, I was a full-time linebacker, and I got moved down. So, yeah, it was definitely a transition, but it was something that was worth it and has been something that I've been very grateful for playing on the defense side of the ball and not the offensive side of the ball.
Come on, you didn't want to be the next Philip Rivers? I mean, he was also a water boy for his dad's team too.
No, no, I guess not. Yeah, it just didn't work out that way, but, yeah, I don't know. I'm very glad I picked linebacker because I don't know if, I picked quarterback that I'd be in New Mexico here sitting on this podcast with you, so it's definitely something that was an honor to do.
Now that is a very good media trained answer. I'll give you credit for that. So tell me about your time at St. Francis and working under the Jacob Craig defense, and what's that environment kind of like being at a Division 1 FCS school?
Yeah, so it's definitely a little different than FBS, but it's the same, football's still the same, the game's still the same. It's still, 6 points for a touchdown, 4 plays to get 10 yards for a first down and everything like that. So I think the game's very similar. Um, One big change I noticed is definitely the height of players. Definitely players a little taller in the upper levels of college football. But yeah, being under Coach Craig, I thought he was a very good DC. I also had my first DC and the original DC who recruited me there was Coach Scott Lewis. And so I was under him for my first 2 years. And then my last year had Coach Craig and had him for a spring ball and then for the fall and ran that defense. And then that transition of having two DCs helped me to be able to learn a new DC because when I transferred into New Mexico, um, it's just tough learning a playbook when you first come into a system. So having two DCs at the same school definitely helped me be able to, be a little more flexible with coaches and just try and run the scheme how they want it to be ran.
When you were making transition from more of a safety position to more linebacker, a la Shaq Barrett from the Panthers, what are some of the kind of the intricacies that you had to change about like either the way you studied the game or your movements, coming from the far back end to now being closer to the line?
Yeah, definitely. One thing is you don't see as much, and the closer you get to the ball, the more lasered in you have to be on one place. When you're a safety, you want to try and see the field and just see the whole big picture and try and make reads off the bigger picture things. But when you're a linebacker, you want to try and read the triangle of the guards, maybe read the off-ball tight end and the running back, and those things should tell you where you need to fit. And with linebacker, when your key does a certain thing, you got to fit super fast and you got to be ready to play on their side of the line of scrimmage. Whereas safety, you can be a little slower to the run fit because it's not always you're needed in the run fit when you're a safety, but definitely as a linebacker, you got to be much quicker with your keys and reads.
So, and then also coming here for transition over to Bedford to St. Francis, was there any kind of like cultural transition you had to make being one of the, being like a private Franciscan Catholic college? Like, what was that kind of campus environment like?
Yeah, I would say there wasn't too much of a difference with the private school because I only grew up about 50 minutes from that university. So the scenery really wasn't much of a change for me. It was maybe a little bit of a harsher winter because Loretto was a little higher up, St. Francis was, than my hometown Bedford was. But no, it wasn't too crazy. And the Franciscan Catholic values were not anything over the top or anything, I would say. And For me myself, I'm a Christian, so I didn't mind some of the values, and I shared some of the values that they had as well. So it wasn't something that was too crazy for me.
So something that would later set the groundwork for your transition is that, in that same Yahoo Sports article, you mentioned you want to be an anesthesiologist, and then you double major in chemistry and math at St. Francis. Was that part of the journey to being an anesthesiologist, or was it studying the chemistry that made you go, I want to start the transition to the nuclear area?
Yeah, so I started. It was really a chemistry pre med type of degree, and for chemistry, you have to take at least one calculus class. You have to get up to a calculus 3 level, I believe, just for the chemistry major. So I took calculus 2, and when I took calculus 2, I was like, wow, I forgot how much I like math, and I really enjoyed doing math. It's not something that too many people say, but I did enjoy it a lot. So I talked with my advisor, and I was like, man, how can I do chemistry and mathematics on a daily basis? And he said, chemical engineering is something that would be of interest for you. So I said, okay, I'd let, is there a possibility I can double major in both of them and then just see, where I can go from there. So that's what I kind of did. And then throughout my college career, and even from a ninth grade, I learned about, nuclear power and things like that. And just all the capabilities it had. I knew, I think after my second year for sure of college, I knew I wanted to go into some type of nuclear engineering graduate school, and so that was just my end goal there, and just with all the capabilities there, that's just, yeah, what I wanted to do.
So you end up doing your time through St. Francis, and you end up making, big splash plays. You come in on that seat, you come in on your first season there, and you come in against Stonehill, and then you end up winning, all these great accolades and everything. But, you could tell that, you say it that you wanted to transition over to something more than St. Francis could offer. So what was that kind of process like, starting to put yourself into the transfer portal and looking at all these different schools?
Yeah, it's a little more difficult, because for a standard player in the transfer portal, it's like, um, you kinda have to, like, teams are more so interviewing you, but when I was looking for nuclear engineering, it was kinda like I was interviewing them, and it was like, what academics can you offer me, this and that, and it wasn't something that too many coaches were used to, and it was something to navigate, just being like reaching out to coaches myself instead of them reaching out to me and being like, hey, I can play football for you and you have a nuclear engineering, do you think I can play for you and you can give me a scholarship? That's not something that too many coaches hear too often. So it was definitely difficult, but I was originally looking at the Colorado School of Mines, and I was talking with them.
Funny that you say that because I was going to ask about that because your page is still up on their website as part of their signing class.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I was signed there for a good portion of the spring, and New Mexico came and offered me a full scholarship, which is something that most D2 programs can't offer, like School of Mines. And it was just an offer I really couldn't turn down. So I ended up going to New Mexico instead of School of Mines, and it's just something that's worked out very well for me.
Okay, so you sure it was that and it wasn't all the wacky headshots with the haircuts and everything that turned you off?
I did see that, and a couple of my friends asked me, like, "Are you gonna cut your hair like that?" I said, I kinda like my head of hair like it is right now, so I might keep it like that."
So, you mentioned that you were the one doing more of the interviewing as opposed to the other way around. Any thought given to like Oregon State or something with their nuclear program, or was it always just locked on New Mexico?
No, yeah, I was open to really anything, and I was trying to DM any coach I could, Purdue was a school, Illinois, some of the Big Ten schools, I would email them. Even FCS schools like Idaho, where Coach Eck came from, and Idaho State as well, were two schools that I tried to reach out to because they were FCS programs, and I knew they had nuclear, and they would be able to offer scholarships. So I reached out to a plethora of schools, but I really didn't get anything from any school except Colorado School of Mines, and then it happened to be that my dad knew the head coach at Marshall, who he had the same agent as Coach Eck, and So the coach from Marshall just reached out to Coach Eck and said, "Hey, you should look at this player." And Coach Eck really did. He was like, Why are you just sending me this random player? I don't really think like if he's so good, then you should just take him. Like, why are you just going to give him to me?" And he said, "No, he's not. He wouldn't commit here because we don't have nuclear engineering, but you do, and he would go to your school over mine for sure." And so Coach Eck ended up taking a chance on me.
I'm telling you, you're the perfect guest because you just teed me up so perfectly. So you mentioned your dad and the relationship with the coach at Marshall.
Hmm.
I ended up finding this online.
Oh my!
I know you know that they played in
Yes,
college.
yes.
So I managed to find this old stat sheet from a game,
Oh, Chris George.
and
That's a name my dad always says. The quarterback for Glenville State, because I guess there was the story of let's see how many
and
tackles he had.
there they are right there.
Two
Number
tackles and
6,
one
Wes,
pass
you
broken up.
and then your coach is right there, Tony Gibson,
Tony
the
Gibson,
coach,
yeah.
number 15.
No way. I gotta get on him. He let Tony Gibson have more tackles than him when they played Shepherd. That's ridiculous. I gotta I gotta talk. Oh my goodness. You do your research. That's impressive. That's an impressive find. I don't even know if I could find that. That's impressive.
So I guess like with all that being said, like, with your dad having those connections and everything, was there ever like even if the like nuclear program aside, was there ever any thought of joining Coach Gibson and Marshall or like, having him talk to maybe a different school besides New Mexico, or was just everything lined up that way perfectly?
Yeah, I originally thought about it because Elon was a school that was recruiting me out of the portal pretty heavily, and also James Madison as well. But ultimately, I just thought, football is something that the shelf life of football, you know, football players age like dogs. So, we only have a certain amount of years to really play football. So I knew, I really only have at most like 5 more years, 6 more years of football in my life. And after that, I needed to be able to do something. So I just knew that nuclear was something I'd really want to go into. And I didn't want to really necessarily go back to school after I finished football. So nuclear was something that was definitely a deal breaker for me. And it was just something I determined throughout my time in the portal that, yeah, I think I am going to look for a school with a nuclear program.
So Coach Jack takes a chance on you and he brings you on as the extra linebacker. They've already recruited a guy. And so, you start going into that environment. You're going from St. Francis all the way to New Mexico and Albuquerque. What was that transition kind of like?
Yeah, no. It's definitely a transition and being high up and especially in the desert, one thing that really got to me was the dryness out here. It really got to my sinuses. So it was
Yeah,
something
yeah.
I definitely had to get acclimated to. But it was something I was able to get acclimated to, and also just being at elevation just helped my breathing as well. I remember one time I think we got off for like 4th of July and I went home and saw my family, spent the 4th of July with my family, and I just did a run workout and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel incredible." And like it was so humid back home that even when I would breathe, it felt like I was like drinking water almost. And I was like, "This is awesome being back home." And I just felt like in such good shape. But yeah, it was something that was I wouldn't say the easiest thing in the world, but something that I worked at and was able to acclimate very well to this environment. And I just love, honestly, the when it's sunny every single day and every morning, it's pretty nice. So I do like the environment and weather out here.
So kind of talk me through your relationship with Coach Ed, because you and him basically almost came in at around the exact same time. He's transitioning also from FCS coming in, into this school that historically has had, decent seasons, but hasn't really been a Mountain West powerhouse. So what was that kind of acclimation like, not only having a deal with a new coach and a new college, but also this whole brand new building up of the football program?
Hmm. Yeah, no, Coach Eck, he's a he's definitely a coach that believes in his players and really pours into his players, which is something I appreciate. And he's also a coach who's very competitive, which is something I also very much appreciate because I'm super competitive even if we play, Monopoly. I'm not happy if I lose at Monopoly. So, playing football games, I just want to win so bad. And he's just someone that really truly you can tell just cares about you. I mean, he's obviously a busy guy and has 105 other guys on the roster, to worry about as well. But he'll walk by you and say a comment that's like, "Oh wow, I don't know how you knew that about me, but you definitely did your research on me." And it was something that I really appreciated from a head coach, where he was intentional about his relationships with all of his players, and also he just poured into all of us and was just so competitive and wanted to win every single game, which is something I just love to see in a head coach.
So, and then, with that, bringing in a coach Jack, he also brings in, another defensive coordinator, and he brings in, Coach Nowinski. So, kind of walk me through what a classic Coach Nowinski scheme is like. What is the base you operate out of, and what are the responsibilities of you as the linebacker?
Yeah, no, for sure. One thing that before every game, he's definitely a fiery and passionate coach. So I don't know if I can say what he says verbatim on here, but
Go ahead.
uh, one thing he emphasizes pregame and just all the time, is stopping the run. Because if you can hold a team and to under 100 yards rushing and make a team be one-dimensional, I mean, it's just such an advantage, especially for your pass rushers when they can pin their ears back and just make plays on the quarterback and get off the ball fast instead of always having to kind of play the run and then transition into a pass rush instead of just being in full pass rush mode. So definitely something that we emphasize a lot is stopping the run, and I would say more so he likes to be out of a one high structure. So that's just something, just learning, how to be gap sound and just where everyone fits on certain plays. And um, yeah, he's just a coach that stop the run, sprint to the ball every single play, and give full effort. And he'll love you as a defensive player if you do that for him.
Now, as somebody who is a fan of a different Mountain West team, the Boise State Broncos, I can say that, stopping the run is very important in this division. So, what would you say is the most important aspect of being a great defense that can stop the run? Is it more gap discipline, or is it more having a front four or front three that can just tee off on the ball and stop guys like right at the line, or hold their positions to where you guys can just come in and finish the tackles?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everyone doing their job, If you have D linemen who are firing off the ball and taking 2 on almost every single snap, it definitely frees up the linebackers, but also the linebackers have to know, okay, if he takes 2, what gap should I fit in? If I'm a B gap fitter, I need to fit in my B gap, but if I get a tight end to swipe across the formation and come across the formation, my B gap, my gap might go from the B gap, to the outside C gap or D gap. So that's just something we all have to be alert for and be cued into, and is something that we all, communicate pre-snap and talk about. But yeah, our front four can tremendously help, and I think we have a great front four, and especially our D tackles in this defense as well. They're the money makers for this defense. So if they can take 2 on every play, I mean, that's just such a help for us when we can keep linemen off of us and make plays where we're not getting blocked. It's just as much the defensive tackles play as our play when we make a unblock tackle for loss or just unblock tackle as well. So definitely the front four is paramount to the defense and just stopping the run overall, but also just everyone being on the same page and knowing the gap we have and how it may change post snap depending on what the offense presents us.
And I know you know a thing or two about defensive tackles because you played with a mutual acquaintance of ours, Ian Thomas, who was your teammate at St. Francis. And you're on record as saying that the hardest player you ever competed against was Sean Fitzsimmons, the D tackle out of Pitt.
Yes, yeah. In high school, he was a beast.
So kind of walk me through kind of walk me through both of those. Like, what was your relationship with Aon like playing in that St. Francis defense? And then what made Sean such a formidable force in high school?
Yeah, I guess I can first start with Sean. He was just someone that just warranted a lot of attention. And if he's right in front of your face every single down, and we were more so an under center team, I'm getting under center, and he's about 2 feet from me, and I'm just seeing him in the dirt, and if we can't block him with 2, it's like, what do you even do? You can't send 3 at someone. If you have to send 3 people at someone, you just can't do anything. And so when you have someone in there that just warrants 2 every single play, it just leaves other players free, and other players can make plays. And even if Sean Fitzsimmons was someone who was so good that when we sent 2 a lot of times, we had a hard time blocking him, and he was just strong and fast and just had a lot of, traits that you needed, and then with Ian, I mean, first off, that's just my guy, I love him, and, wish him all the best at Maryland, but he was someone who just he was constantly making plays, and he was someone that also warranted 2 people every single play, and if you didn't block Ian Thomas with 2 people, he was gonna hit some good swim move or get through the front and just be able to make a play for our defense and just let the offense know that you need to send 2 of me every single play or you're gonna pay.
So,
Um,
oh yeah,
oh,
so having both you guys played at St. Francis and everything, and then transferred from FBS to FBS. Um, with the new age of NIL coming about within the past couple years, what was that whole kind of situation like? Was that even something that was even talked about at the FCS level? And then when you got over to New Mexico, was there anybody who just started to advise you on all the inner workings of all that type of stuff?
yeah. I would say at St. Francis, it's not something that's talked about too much because they don't have the budget to quite do that, just with NIL and things like that. But definitely at the FBS level, they would bring in advisors to, help us finance our money and spend our money smartly. And that was when I was like, oh my gosh, this is the real deal of football, where they're bringing in people to tell us how to spend our money. I wasn't getting any money to spend at St. Francis unless I would serve tables or do stuff like that on the weekends. There weren't people advising me how to spend the money they were giving me. So that's when I knew it was real deal football. But yeah, it's definitely different, at the FBS level when NIL is definitely prevalent and schools have money to spend on players and be able to give players through revenue share and things like that. So that's been something that's been awesome for me to be able to, profit a little bit off of my play and just through all the wonderful fans and things that we get from New Mexico football.
And are there kind of like intricacies that maybe we as fans don't know? Like, maybe there's a local car dealership that reaches out to the university, and then you guys start doing like the ads on Instagram or the commercials or stuff like that. So is it more those opportunities come to you guys, or do you guys like, I know this local shop right here that I want to have sponsor me or something like that?
Yeah. I think it's a blend of both, if you can market yourself and you can make yourself, a presence on social media or just a presence overall and a familiar face that people know, it's definitely someone that companies want to reach out to. But if you go to companies maybe and try and get your own opportunity or something like that, you can definitely make money off of that through that company. And yeah, that's just so I guess it's a two-sided coin or double-edged sword and something that we can reach out but also they can reach out to us. It just all depends on how you market yourself and make yourself presentable.
So just as you yourself, Mercury, is there a dream sponsor that you would have? And then is there, as the chemistry and math person, is there another dream sponsorship that you just like for shits and giggles that you would like to have?
Yeah, I don't even know what a dream sponsorship for me would be. One thing my dad always talks about, and it's kind of funny. I wear like American Eagle underwear all the time, and sometimes, if your pants fall down a little bit, you can kind of see the American Eagle underwear in like all the pictures that are taken. And my dad's always like, "Oh, we need to get American Eagle. That would be so cool." Blah 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 blah. So I don't know if that's a dream, but that's definitely something that me and my dad talk about at times. But with, with the chemistry and math, I don't even know what something would be that I'd wanna sponsor, there's, like, YouTube pages and stuff like that that I watch. I know there's one called Vertasium, but I don't even know if that's something they would even do or something like that where they would sponsor a guy, and I don't even know how I would make them more marketable if they say, "A football player watches our YouTube page," because they 'cause they're already a huge force on YouTube and things like that, but yeah, that'd probably be the STEM one I would say that would definitely be a dream if they sponsor me in some way, shape, or form.
Not even a Texas Instruments with the calculators?
I guess that's true, yeah. Maybe a battery company so I can, have batteries for life for my calculators.
I mean, there are some batteries that are made out of mercury. That would be some way you can connect the two
That
together.
that would be a good one, yeah.
So you come into New Mexico and you're not really starting the first few games, but then you just start everything just starts clicking. So what game during the season would you say that everything just started to like click, where you could just see the field and just go attack the ball?
Yeah, for sure. It was something that was a slow progress. I wouldn't say it was, a flip of the switch, but definitely when you get game reps, you can get confidence in game. That's something that's just such an important thing for a player and even me, just confidence in yourself when you can really, prove yourself in game because it's a lot different in practice. Obviously you practice the same guys every day, but when you can go and do it in game, you can feel really good about yourself. But I only got 4 snaps against UCLA, but in my 5 snaps against UCLA, but in my 5 snaps, I remember I made like an open field 2 open field tackles, and I made it like a kind of a break on a ball and kind of hit a receiver to kind of tip a ball up with help from, my fellow linebacker Jackson as well. We got the ball tipped up and Tavian made an interception. From those 5 plays, I really got a lot of confidence and we were able to beat UCLA, and then I kind of parlayed that into New Mexico State, the big rivalry game when we had a huge crowd, and I got a lot more snaps that game as well. And I played fairly well that game. Definitely had some mistakes that I needed to clean up, and then went into San Jose State, played a little better. Definitely could have played better, but there were improvements. And I believe the week after that was, yeah, it was Boise State, and I had a the team itself, we didn't have a great game, but we were fitting the run up fairly well. Definitely could have fitted up better. And then the next week we went into playing UNLV, and UNLV was a week where we had a very good game against stopping the run, and that was probably the biggest game that gave my most confidence boost when we played UNLV, and it was just like something that was just not a weight lifted off my shoulders, but just I can really play with these guys and I know what I'm doing and I just need to trust myself and be confident in myself because, I'm proving to myself that I can play. So that was just a game, UNLV, that was just so cool. And being in the Raiders Stadium, that was something that, as a little kid, that's almost like a dream come true. So just both of those things and becoming bowl eligible that game, all those things just helped me to be able to build confidence.
Having been there multiple times for the UNLV Boise State games, I can absolutely agree. That stadium is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So, uh, and so we go through all that, and then statistically, your best game was when you really showed up against Air Force with the 11 tackles and the sack. Walk me through that kind of game. You're coming into that game with all this confidence, and then all of a sudden you just kind of burst onto the scene there.
hmm Yeah, so what's actually funny about Air Force is I played quarterback in high school, but the offense I ran in high school was more of a triple option type of scheme and like the veer and things like that. We'd have double wings and a fullback right behind me. So I was pretty familiar with the offense because I used to run it myself. So it wasn't something that was anything, they weren't reinventing the wheel or anything to me. So it was something that I very much understood. And, for teams like Air Force, they're just trying to, wear you down through the war of attrition, just hit, hit, hit every play. And that's just something I try and pride myself on to where I won't quit and I won't be wore down. So that was just a game that the whole team as a whole, we played so good, I thought, and we were just flying to the ball every play and giving 100% effort, which is what you really need from a defense. And that's just something that I just give credit to a lot of my teammates because they were making plays and they were help open up and get me unblocked to on a lot of plays for me to be able to make a tackle. And when it's my turn to make a tackle for the defense, I'm going to make the tackle. And for that game, it just happened to be for 11 tackles, and for other games, it was other people's turn to be able to make tackles. But that one was one that was very cool, to be able to get a double digit tackles for I think the first time in my career. So that was a good game and fun.
It's funny that you mentioned all that because, the Army and Navy have had some great seasons.
Yeah.
So, what, in your opinion, is something that defenses or teams kind of do completely wrong when trying to scheme against that kind of triple option offense?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if it's a scheme issue. I just think it's a consistency issue because with teams like the academy, a lot of their players are very strict and well mannered and things like that. They make their bed every morning. They're in the army. They're getting ready to serve our country. So they're very ordered and things like that. So they'll run the same play, and it, it's all about us just doing our job every single play. And it's not something that we can take off this play and be like, oh, well, I didn't make the play last time, so I'm gonna do this and try and make the play. Well, if you do that, then you're gonna open up a crease in the defense, and then they'll run right through it. So a lot of service academies can kind of take advantage of, guys being out of place and guys not doing their job. But that's just something that it really comes down to just the players doing their job every single play and, not getting tired of just if your job on that play is to hit the fullback as hard as you can and force the ball to go inside of you, then that's just your job. And if you're called to do it 50 times that game, then that's what you got to do 50 times. And if you get bored of it against like a team like Air Force, Army, or Navy, and maybe you go inside and try and slip the blocker and make the play, then they can just exploit it and get a big run. And they're also a team that they want to get 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, and then convert on a fourth down, and then maybe 3 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards on the run. And they want to have a big long drive. So just doing your job every play and playing as physical as you can against teams like that is just the best way to be able to counter, the triple option and things like that.
And then you mentioned having run that kind of scheme in high school. So that's actually a great thing to ask is that, having, gone to the other side of the ball do you think that your experience as a quarterback kind of helps you see the defense in a different light compared to somebody who's just played defense their whole life?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm able to know, what a quarterback's thinking on a given play and just how offenses like to run things and how a quarterback, likes to feel. If a quarterback has for me, if I had people in my face every play trying to like getting in my face and not clean pockets, that's not a comfortable feeling as a quarterback. So anytime we as a defense, can kind of rattle a quarterback or hit a quarterback or even, take a quarterback's run game away. Cause when you can't run the ball as a quarterback and like I said, the defensive ends can pin their ears back and teams can just play man to man and really cover up and cover down. It's something that's very difficult as a quarterback because when they're expecting you to pass, it's just very difficult to be able to do things and not be able to switch things up. So that's definitely something that helps me out a lot being a former quarterback in high school.
So when you're flipping both sides, from the quarterback perspective, you're kind of looking at the defense and where the safeties are positioned, where the linebackers are positioned. On the other side, when you're as a linebacker, are you looking at like the lineman splits, where their feet are positioned, where the quarterback is out of his stance? Like, what do you look for on the defensive side that's kind of similar to that?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that you only get a usually you only get a snapshot of something because a linebacker's main job is to make sure the defense runs correctly. So if someone doesn't get a call or someone does something wrong, it's usually, the linebacker's fault that that happened and not really the player's fault. So we got to get everyone set. So usually I try and take a snapshot. I just try and get my reads off the guards. I'll try and look at the two guards and tackle to my side. And then, where the running back is in relation to the off ball tight end or just the formations they're presenting. And even a lot of teams have different tendencies, maybe with their personnel. So if they go one tight end, one running back, so 11 personnel, or then maybe they go two tight ends and one running back, so 12 personnel. They might lean more towards like run, or if it's like maybe down a distance, something like that that we're cued in on that week for a certain team. Just various things like that that I try and keep in my mind. But I just try and keep it simple and not think too much because I more so want to react and be fast to the ball instead of you know paralysis by analysis, like some people like to say.
And another part of obviously your gift as linebacker is you have all that kind of math background.
Mhm.
Is that something that like actually comes into play with you as linebacker, kind of looking at like angles or speeds or any of those type of like external factors?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe you could ask some of my teammates and they're like, "Oh yeah, he calculates everything he does." But I don't know. One thing I just try and play as fast as I can, and one thing when I tackle is just try and close space as much as I can. And an open field tackle is much harder than a closed space tackle. So I try and make every single tackle I make be close space and try and just be right on a receiver when they catch the ball and try and prevent as many open field tackles as I can. Because for any defender in the world, an open field tackle is very difficult, and offensive guys are on scholarship too, so they're tough to tackle in open field space, and that's where an offensive coordinator is trying to scheme them at. So yeah, just when I tackle, I just try and close space very fast. I don't know if I'd necessarily calculate things or something like that, but yeah, I just try and play as fast as I can. That's just my motto for that.
Actually, this is kind of a question that I just thought of, and it might be a little silly, but I'm actually kind of curious. Like, from your perspective, having studied like all these different things within the chemical world, and there's some physics that also go with nuclear engineering. Is there just some kind of like beauty to the game of football that you see like from the science aspect of like tackles and leverage and like the physics of the stopping motion and all that type of stuff? Is that something that just kind of like maybe after the game or during the game that just kind of like comes to your mind?
Yeah, and I for a bigger picture, even like football as a whole is almost like a chess match, even, and offensive play callers are trying to move their chess pieces. They might have their number one target is someone they really want to target, and so they maybe want to throw some things in our face or have us look at different things that we shouldn't be looking at to try and get their best player of the ball as many times as they can in an open field. But even with making tackles, you always say the low man wins, and if you can get under and produce force under someone, that's something that's very cool. And just even as a fan and just someone that loves the game of football, those things that when physics and math and football can combine, that's very cool. And yeah, that's something that I definitely appreciate and look back fondly upon in some of my tackles and just some different things like that.
So New Mexico is going on this great season, 6-2 in the Mountain West, 6-0 at home, and it all culminates in one of the biggest games of the season in even just outside the Mountain West, you guys versus San Diego State in the turquoise. Walk me through that whole game environment and just how that went entering overtime.
Yeah, so I mean, our fans were probably gave us at least 7 points in that game. Our fans were incredible. They were loud, they were rowdy, they were into the game the whole game. So shout out our fans for that win as well. But um, also, just we prepared the same way we did for any other week. San Diego State was a team that they had a lot of things they liked to present us. That week, they presented us with a lot of new runs. And, they didn't present on film or anything like that, just new runs, new schemes. And they definitely did their homework on our defense, and they had a few things that kind of gave us fits and trouble. But, like I said, just giving full effort as a defense and just trying to rally to the ball every play always helps to mitigate plays that might go for 10 yards to maybe a 5-yard gain. And maybe we can try and have a 2nd and 5 and try and get them behind the sticks and go 3rd and 8 or something like that and give us a chance. So that was just something we were just trying to mitigate some of those plays that they hadn't presented to us, and in halftime trying to make adjustments and things like that. And then when we could get a team like San Diego State into overtime, and with the first overtime we got a interception from our safety and corner. Really, our corner tipped it up to our safety, and then we were able to get the ball, but we actually fumbled in the first overtime. But the second overtime, we were able to score. I think it was either the first, it might have been the first play of the drive. Great catch by our tight end, Kate Keith, one hand catch, took it to the end zone. And then as a defense, we had 3 straight false starts for one of the final plays of the drive. And that really set us up in prime position. And we were just able to all rally to the ball and make plays. And so that was a really awesome and special game for just being a New Mexico fan and just as in general, um, as a player as well. Just seeing the environment, it was so cool.
So I'm actually kind of curious from a player's perspective, like, every play is important, obviously, in a game, but you kind of have the benefit of like, well, if a play breaks off for like 80 yards or something down the field, you can have somebody who can go tackle, and you have different downs and and all these downs and distances. But when it changes to overtime, it's like every single play is important, and you're operating only within sometimes anywhere from a 30 to 25 to only, 2 yard field. Does the kind of like the chess match or the mentality kind of change to where it's like you have to be a little bit more careful with your tackles because if it breaks, then that's basically the game. Like,
Yeah.
how does the mindset kind of change at all heading into overtime when you have those more parameters and the limited space to operate?
Yeah, I mean, overtime is definitely a special case because teams like, especially in the last game of the season, an offensive coordinator is going to empty their playbook, just try and get the win. So you just got to be ready for anything. But also, just in general, in the red zone for teams, you know, you got to tighten down and you got to like be a lot closer to people, and you got to if you're covering a receiver, you got to be even one step closer than you would be in the open field. Whereas even with a running back, you got to try and get on them quicker than normal if you're in the open field because every single yard in the red zone is just something you cannot give up because that just puts them closer and closer to the end zone. So, yeah, in the red zone and in overtime, just when you're down there, you just have to be very alert as a defense and very quick to be able to read and diagnose things. Whereas when you're in the open field, you can kind of be not lackadaisical. I shouldn't say lackadaisical, but it is a lot more forgiving if you kinda make a mistake in the open field, whereas if you make a mistake in the red zone, it's 6 points, so
Now, there was the whole process that kind of played out after that win with, you guys, UNLV, Boise State, and San Diego State all trying to vie for the Mountain West championship. I'm sure as a player and as a competitor, you were disappointed to not get your foot in the dance, but was there a team you were particularly hoping for that if you did make it, you're like, yes, we want to crack at them for the championship?
I don't think there was necessarily a team. I think we were ready for any team we would face. Just excited for the opportunity to be able to compete in a championship. That would have been something. I guess maybe teams we were kinda hoping for because we would've got a home game would have been like San Diego State or UNLV, but, even Boise State, going up to Boise State again, we would've gone in with a chip on our shoulder with something to prove, so any team we would've gone and faced, it would've been a very exciting thing, and that would've been something that I would've been very much looking forward to, being able to play for a championship in a championship game, which is something I've never done in my career, so there wasn't really a specific team, just trying to get mentally prepared and ready to play a championship game was, from a player's perspective, what we were kind of all hoping for.
Even I'll say as a BSU fan, you guys got robbed because I would have much rather seen a rematch between you and San Diego State or us against San Diego State or us against you guys far more than what ended up happening.
Yeah.
And
No.
especially since if, SDSU would have got it, then I would have been able to go down for a third game again and not be in the middle of a rainstorm while that happened.
Oh, yeah, that was a crappy weather and environment I heard for the championship game in Boise.
Yeah, and then when I went to go see the SDSU Boise State game, there was a rainstorm that was basically going on the entire time, so that wasn't fun on top of everything else. But, so that and the chips don't fall where they need to, but you guys do end up getting selected to the Cactus Bowl to play, Coach Fleck and the Golden Gophers. What was that kind of experience like experiencing your first bowl game?
That was awesome, you know, the bowl game and just getting I felt almost like a celebrity. We came off the plane and they were, like, giving us, like, little stickers and things for our bags, and it was one of the coolest experiences I had been a part of, and just being able to see, all the things we saw, being able to see the Diamondback Stadium and playing inside of it was not something I ever thought I'd be doing in my life being a kid from Pennsylvania, but our fans showed up and showed out, you know? We as a defense were not ready for our fans to be that loud, and I remember the first snap, it was almost like a bomb erupted inside of my ears, and I remember from the first snap, I was like, "Phew, we gotta be pretty slick with our hand signals this game because it is loud in this stadium," which is something I want our fans to be so loud that we have to use hand signals every game. So I'm not saying not to be loud as a fan base, but, you know, it's something as a defense, we gotta get ready for and be prepared for. But, yeah, we were able to adjust and another game, the chips didn't fall in our favor, and but it was such a fun game, and the fans were awesome. The experience was awesome, and it was a learning curve as well, just a learner for all of us as a players. A lot of times when you lose, you learn a lot more than when you win. So just from that game, we were to learn and be able to get a lot better. as a defense as a whole. So that's just something we're hoping to try and build off of and build off that last game this season and roll into this season, hopefully hot, and try and just keep building every year, every season, and just get better every single day.
So now we're heading into the 2026 season. And what are some of the kind of intricacies to your game that you're starting to work on or improve, or things that you've learned that you want to start adding into your play?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me personally, I just want to be better with, where I'm looking and also just trusting my instincts at times. There were times when I don't e I guess you can call it like spidey senses or something. I just feel like a play is gonna come, and sometimes I don't trust myself, and then that play ends up coming, and it was something I coulda got a tackle for loss or something on, but I just didn't trust myself, and I ended up maybe getting blocked or something like that, and so just maybe trusting myself more and just being quicker to trigger off the ball and being able to make more plays, yeah, and just having my eyes in the correct spot on every single play and just being more consistent overall as a player.
So now we've gone through the whole football journey, and I would be remiss if we did not talk some science here. So walk me through the nuclear side of it. What about it clicked to you back in ninth grade that just made you want to pursue it as a passion?
Just hearing when they said figures like, nuclear is fission itself is like 10,000 times more energy dense than, fossil fuels and things like that. That's just something that's like, whoa, okay. Well, how does this even work? And that's just something that, kind of got me curious. And that was something I really wanted to study. And also, I think it's something that's very cool. And also with fossil fuels, not being as abundant as they used to be. And fossil fuels releasing carbon dioxide, I just think nuclear is a much better option for just overall environment and safety because, nuclear waste you can see, but, it takes up a much smaller volume. Whereas when you release carbon dioxide, it just goes into the open air for, humans to breathe and even just contribute to different global warming and things like that. But, I think nuclear is something that is definitely was something that I thought was very interesting and cool, and the idea of being able to split particles and getting electricity out of that is something that just always fascinates me, and seeing all the cool facilities that was just something that me as a science and STEM lover, I couldn't resist going into that field.
What do you think is the one misconception that a lot of the general public has about nuclear energy?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is, when people hear nuclear, they just immediately go to bombs and just uncontrolled nuclear reactions, whereas a lot of nuclear reactions, especially nowadays, it's so controlled and in such controlled environments that, like, worst case scenario, you are not going to have anything bad happen because it's virtually impossible for runaway reactions to happen. Like when you see bombs dropped and things like that, that's just not possible at all within a core. But even so, with reactions like or situations like Chernobyl and things like that, that's just not something that is going to be happening anymore because that was something scientists learned from, and it was such an unfortunate thing for nuclear itself because it set the nuclear growth back by so many years, but it was something that just humans were able to learn some from by so much, and us as nuclear engineers were able to be like, oh well, that was the issue. It's easy to see now and very elementary for nuclear engineers to be able to diagnose and be like, okay, yeah, you can never make a nuclear reactor like that. But it's just something that is so unfortunate because it's hard for that to get out to people and just be like, oh, it's never going to happen again. But it's hard for people to really trust and believe that it's never going to happen again because they just think of, bombs and things like that and uncontrolled reactions where obviously these things release a lot of energy. So it can be dangerous, but it's a very controlled and safe environment that's not something that will kill a lot of people at all or any people.
Logistically, what do you think is the biggest challenge that face nuclear energy as far as like building new power plants or things like that?
Yeah, if when you talk about new power plants, as in maybe like some of the newer types of reactors, logistically, the hardest part is, passing safety standards and things like that because I mean, the government, no government wants to be responsible for saying okay to a some type of new nuclear power plant and that nuclear power plant melting down or something. And even with that, the construction of these buildings takes a lot of time because we want to make sure that, like I said, these things are very safe and in controlled environments. But if they're not manufactured properly, then we can't ensure that. So that's just something being very detail oriented with these things, but also, meeting different standards for safety and safety precautions and things like that. That's something that's very paramount to nuclear energy and when building a power plant, and something that's a lot different than something like fossil fuels because you can be right by coal burning, but you cannot be right beside at the inside of a reactor core burning. So it just takes a lot more safety precautions and just cutting the red tape and things like that.
As as a passionate person in regards to nuclear energy, do you ever get annoyed by the way it's portrayed in media, especially with shows like The Simpsons?
I think it's something that's understandable. You've seen the things that nuclear can do when an uncontrolled reaction is let go. It's very powerful and explosive. So it's something that's very scary. But it's not something that you'll grow five more limbs or have superpowers or something like that. So I just think that's funny sci-fi and things like that. But it's understandable because when humans were first building fire, when they saw fire and they touched it and it was super hot, it's something that initially you were like, oh, this is super scary, we should never play with this at all ever again. But when you learn about things and you can continue to broaden your education and things like that, it's something that just humans overall need to just get a better understanding of. And I'm not saying it's a fault of any one person, but it's just something that if humans can have a better understanding of it, it won't be near as scary as some people think it is.
And then, you know, you have the name that's perfect for what you're doing right now. So I would be not doing my due diligence if I didn't at least ask you to walk me through some of the great things about the actual element of mercury.
Yeah, I mean, I think mercury, is the coolest metal in my opinion, but it's obviously a little poisonous. So people say sometimes, stay away from me, blah 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 blah. But that's just a funny little joke. But yeah, it's a really cool element, and being that it's liquid at room temperature and the only metal to be like that, I think it's a very cool element, and it's been in a lot of thermometers. I mean, obviously they don't sell them or anything, and I wouldn't want to poison myself with mercury, but if I can, see a mercury thermometer or something like that, I need to try and get my hands on something like that.
Hey, you know what? Now you actually raise a fair question. Would you ever start collecting like the uranium glass or things like that?
I don't know, if I could safely contain it, I think it would be something that would be very cool and stuff like that. But I wouldn't want to put any one of my family members or people like that, or even myself, at risk of radiation poisoning or things like that.
Fair enough. So I think we've just about come to our end here. But the way I like to end all my interviews is the main basis for this show was my love of shows like Hot Ones that go in deep with the research,
Hmm.
and then an older show that used to be on called Inside the Actor Studio that would always with a questionnaire with interviewing actors.
Hmm.
So I have this questionnaire that I kind of built based on those questions, but also kind of included my own spin.
Okay.
So I just like to go over those with you, and you just give me whatever answer that comes to the top of your mind.
Perfect.
So, question one: what is your favorite word?
What is wow, that's a good one. My favorite word. Um, Man, that's a loaded question. I think you should ask my one of my roommates. He knows, like, he's like, you always say this. What word is it? It might be, I think it's literally. Literally is a word I use a lot. And he says when I'm in interviews I must get nervous, I say so those are my maybe two most used words. But maybe my favorite word that's kind of cool. I think the word like superfluous, that kind of means like a lot and things like that. I think it's just a cool word and it sounds cool. So I like to use it sometimes when I can in papers and things like that. And I'll use it improperly, but still sounds cool.
I have already answered this, but we'll see. What is your least favorite word?
Least favorite word? Probably When I say it, I get made fun of sometimes, so probably that one when I say, and or like.
What turns you on or just brings you up?
Just overall as a person?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, said it again. But I would say for me, it's just my faith in the Lord. That's definitely something that I try and lean on, and I really get into the Bible and study the Word and things like that. That's something that I really lean on, and having the faith just helps me be happy. But also just having a good outlook on life. I'm very blessed to be in the situation I am, and I know what even harder work is than what I do. Waking up and working out and things like that is very difficult, but it can be way worse. As when I was growing up, I'd help my grandpa in with his garden and things like that, and that was some of the harder work I've ever done in my life. So I'm very blessed to be in the situation I am. So I try and remind myself every day that this place that I'm in, and being able to be blessed and have people around me that really support and try and see the best for me, that's something that really pushes me and motivates me every day to be happy and be positive.
Turns you off?
Turns me off. What turns me off? Probably negative people, especially in the field that I'm in. If I have teammates that are negative, I'll try and always let them know that you're so blessed to be where you're at. Some days are very hard and very difficult, and even I myself, it's hard to be positive at all times. But it's something that turns me off is just people being negative or things like that, and just not being appreciative of the life you have. And even if you're not in the game of football, just being able to be alive and experience life is something that's such a blessing, in my opinion.
Brings you peace?
Peace, sunsets and sunrises, those two really bring me peace. When I see a good sunset or sunrise, especially when I'm going rushing maybe to a morning workout or something like that, and I can see a sunrise on my way to the facility, that's something that really brings me peace and tranquility. And yeah, that, and I like to drink some hot tea at night at times, so that's another thing that definitely brings me some peace.
What riles you up?
Riles me up when I make a big tackle on the field. No, yeah, even football games sometimes get me pretty emotionally riled up and definitely emotionally on high. And also, I guess when I sometimes I make mistakes that I shouldn't, that kinda gets me real mad at myself, because it's like, if I make a mistake that I know way better than that, even beyond the football field, if I, screw up a test or something like that on something, I do 2 times 2 is 5 or something like that. It's always some stupid type of math, and I'm always just so mad at myself. But yeah, that's something that definitely riles me up.
What job or career other than you own would you like to attempt?
What job or career? I would say, I think either being a teacher, something like that, or hmm, I think it's definitely a high stress, and the hours probably wouldn't be the greatest, but I think bartending is something that's pretty cool. I enjoy, I think it's pretty cool being able to talk to different people of different backgrounds. And for me, I struggle sometimes, introducing myself to people. And, if you're a bartender, you just naturally get to talk with someone about something. So I think when I served, I got to meet so many and talk to so many different people. I think bartending would be even better, because you're just standing beside these people and talking with them the whole time. So I think that'd be something that'd be very cool along with teaching.
Well, this isn't one of the questions, but now I have to ask. What would be your go-to drink then?
My go-to drink, like a specialty drink, or one that I would just my go-to overall drink.
Either one, whatever you think you would make best for everybody.
Whatever I think I would make best. My favorite drink is like a Malibu and pineapple, so more of like I guess a fruity drink. Something I think I might make well. I think I could make like a good margarita, like some type of special, maybe not a classic margarita, but some type of, I don't even know, some type of weird flavor margarita that would surprise people.
Um, let's see. Oh yeah. If there's an afterlife, what would you like to experience when you first arrive?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I don't know why my camera keeps cutting in and out, but something I would like to experience. Hmm. I would say, just kinda seeing maybe past family members of mine and talking with them, or even just, seeing the Lord himself face to face and being able to talk with him about, of various different things. That would definitely be something that I'd wanna experience first, and yeah, seeing the Lord face to face would be something that's yeah, big. That would definitely be my first thing I'd want to experience.
Now, obviously, you're pretty young and you've got a whole big long life to live. But I guess in terms of what you've done now, be it personally or football wise, what do you believe is the legacy that you leave behind?
I I think for me, a legacy I wanna leave behind is just someone who tries to positively impact the people around him. I just wanna uplift people around me and help people out. I don't wanna be someone who is viewed as, selfish, things like that. I just wanna be someone who people can talk to, people can go to if they need advice, or even just overall if they don't need something like that. I try and go out of my way to help people, and I just wanna be kinda known and remembered as someone like that.
And then finally, if you could share one piece of advice with the world, what would it be?
One piece of advice. I would say, take every day as its own gift and own thing. If you look too far ahead or too far behind, you can kind of get lost in what is and what is not, you know? So just being in the present moment and enjoying what you have right now. And even if the present moment isn't fun, and I don't know, for me as a football player, being in the middle of a hot summer conditioning is not exactly the most ideal thing, I would say. But, just trying to enjoy different things of life and being within the present moment, keeping my mind within the present moment is something that I would say is something people can try and do just throughout their life and just try and apply to their lives.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. And in this present moment, we come to our end. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to thank my guest here, Mercury, for everything he's done today. He's taken this whole hour plus of time in there. So, sir, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you for reaching out, and I just hope you have a great rest of your day as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is Vincent Rodriguez signing out for the Slap in VR. Thank you and goodbye.